Good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I am your host, Frank Acom, and I'm so glad that you've joined us this morning on the program, and we have an exciting morning in store. We'll be talking with Sheriff Jim Allard here in just a little bit. You may have heard by now that New York's congressional lines must be redrawn. Yes, if it wasn't confusing enough, if the whole system wasn't a mess enough, that decision, deemed a victory for Democrats, came from New York's top court, the Court of Appeals. They ruled to have the Independent Redistricting Commission redraw the state's congressional district maps. There's a good chance that once Republicans look at the newly drawn maps, there will be lawsuits. As Ed Cox, the chair of the New York State Republican Committee, said, if Democrats do that, we're right back in court, going up through the court system, challenging the maps under the provisions of the New York State Constitution. Now listen to this timing. They have to have the new maps by February 28th. Do you know when ballot petitioning begins? When you have to start getting your petition signed? March 1st. Hardly fair for those running in the redistricting congressional district. Let's go to some comments on this. First, we'll start. I thought I had it here, but I guess I do not have it right in front of me, but that's okay. We'll read it right off the screen. We're going to start with Assemblyman Phil Palmisano. The Court of Appeals has just sent New York's congressional districts into chaos. In 2014, the voters of the state made it clear they no longer wanted partisan gerrymandering. Democrats in Washington and Albany, however, had different plans. Instead of accepting the fair and competitive lines drawn by the special courtmaster that were used in the 2022 elections, Democrats have decided the lines needed to be redrawn because they lost control of Congress. Continuing here, again, this is Assemblyman Phil Palmisano. This was always part of their plan from the beginning. First, file a lawsuit to throw out the congressional districts. Then, appoint a new Court of Appeals judge. This appointment was later followed by a judge's recusal and replacement appointed just for this case. Now, the Court of Appeals has ruled and sent the congressional maps back to the Independent Redistricting Committee. Continuing, the IRC is set up to fail to come up with a bipartisan agreement on fair and competitive congressional districts and instead allow the Democrat-controlled legislature to draw new gerrymandered congressional maps that favor Democrats to shift the power in Congress. Unfortunately, Democrats in Washington and Albany do not want fair and competitive congressional districts. They just want power. And that's a very good point from Assemblyman Phil Palmisano, because one of the things that can be said about the recent congressional race was that it was very competitive. There's even articles that I have here that it was right here. The court on Tuesday vacated the ultra-competitive court-drawn congressional map used in the midterms. Wouldn't you want ultra-competitive? Not according, and like the Assemblyman said, not according to the Democrats in the state. They're very happy. They welcome this. Governor Hochul, very excited about this decision. Hakeem Jeffries, very excited. Now, there was a joint statement from the House GOP conference chair, Elise Stefanik, and, who I mentioned earlier, the New York Republican chairman, Ed Cox. And this is what they had to say. The court's decision today is plainly wrong on the Constitution and the law. In the relentless pursuit of power at all costs, corrupt Democrats in Albany and Washington have politicized the Court of Appeals. Its once esteemed reputation is in tatters. The outcome was preordained by Democrats' unjustified opposition to Justice Hector LaSalle and the suspicious recusal of Judge Caitlin Halligan. The decision today opens the door for Democrats to rig our congressional district lines so that elections are decided not by the voters, but by by politicians. I had a candy cane right before I went on the air. Not a good idea. But by politicians in a back room. New York Republicans will not give up the fight against gerrymandering and for free and fair elections. The people of New York deserve better than this. Yes, this puts everything to use Assemblyman Phil Palmisano's word, and I think it's an appropriate word in this case, chaos. This, again, at a time when we want people to vote, to be politically active, and yet we draw this kind of confusion. And again, in the past, this was every 10 years. Now, as Politico reports, it's becoming more common to do mid-decade redistricting. We're going to talk just a second more about this when we come back. So stay with us. It's time for our first break. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Beautiful Market Street in Corning. That's where we're broadcasting from, live from the Hesselson studio. I'm your host, Frank Acom. This is Frankly Speaking on WYDC TV, Big Fox. So this is just crazy. The New York High Court just blew up the fight for control of the House. Now, this is not just talking about what's happening in New York. This is at the nationwide level. We're talking about who will get the majority. New York's High Court gave Democrats a big leg up in the dogfight for control of the House of Representatives, according to Politico. Yes, they never like how it all went down. That's why you saw Governor Hochul starting to speak out on public safety, because she was concerned that that's what cost them the House, because Lee Zeldin did such a good job campaigning that we won seats that were not expected to go to Republicans, because it was ultra competitive, which is what you want. So then you started to see kind of the fake interest in public safety, because she realized that could have ultimately cost them, meaning Democrats, the House. The court on Tuesday vacated the ultra-competitive, there it is again, court-drawn congressional map used in the midterms, ordering the map to be redrawn. That process is ultimately controlled by Democrats, so the ruling opens the door for Empire State Democrats to gerrymander the district, ousting several Republicans in one foul swoop. Now, this is from Politico. They go through what you need to take away from this. You know, they're trying to suggest, well, this is fair because, well, I'll quote it, a Democrat gerrymander in New York would offset the GOP one in North Carolina. Okay. Now, they do say there's still a lot of uncertainty. Theoretically, New York Democrats might not draw the map. Redistricting is being sent back to the state's bipartisan Redistricting Commission, which voters approved in 2014. The commission, which is split evenly between appointees loyal to the two parties, could usher through a new map by a February 28th deadline. Again, deadline February 28th, yet petitions begin on March 1st. Here's how it's supposed to work. The commission draws a map and sends it to the legislature for an up or down vote. If the legislature rejects the first map, the commission gets another crack at it. If the legislature rejects it a second time, then and only then does the legislature get to draw the lines. That is not what happened last year. When the commission met to draw New York's lines for the next 10 years, the GOP and Democrat appointees failed to agree upon a map. Legislative Democrats passed their own gerrymandered maps instead. The state's Court of Appeals threw out the map, declaring the process unconstitutional, with a court-drawn map being used in the midterms. So there's an outcome where the bipartisan redistricting commission draws consensus lines, and the Democrat-controlled legislature gives it the okay. But there are still significant questions. Will this commission fail again? Will it find an agreement? But the Democrat-dominated legislature reject it anyway. Yes, and that's one of the uphill battles, because you've got the supermajority, of course, in the legislature with Democrats. How aggressive would Democrat lawmakers be in gerrymandering the lines should they take over the process again? And there's some other takeaways. I think we get the gist. The New York Post said the 4-3 decision from the New York Court of Appeals will require the state's independent redistricting commission to have another crack at it. I don't have a lot of faith there. Governor Hochul, because we try to give you all the sides of the story here on Frankly Speaking, Governor Kathy Hochul said today's redistricting decision will ensure all New Yorkers are fairly and equitably represented by elected officials. As the Court of Appeals reaffirmed today, district lines should be drawn by the Independent Redistricting Commission. We will continue our efforts to protect voting rights for all New Yorkers. So that's Governor Hochul. Now, the New York Republican Congressional Committee, we already heard from Elise Stefanik and Ed Cox and, of course, Assemblyman Phil Palmisano. The National Republican Congressional Committee said, "We are disappointed but not surprised by the court's decision to allow Democrats a second attempt at gerrymandering the maps. Instead of focusing on policies that appeal to everyday voters, Democrats are trying to cheat their way into power." And that's exactly what this looks like. So we will keep you updated on anything we hear on that. I'm sure this will be a discussion we'll be having many, many times in the future. But right now, we've got to take another short break. We're moving fast this morning. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
Merry Christmas. Happy Christmas. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas!
Merry Christmas.
Christmas. Merry Christmas, everybody. Love you.
Love you. Merry Christmas!
Merry Christmas.
Well, I love those Christmas greeting ads, don't you? That was from Sparkle. So many people participated. That was a lot of fun to watch them record. A couple of quick announcements before we get into some other topics of the day. One quick comment that we received from a viewer regarding the topics we've been discussing this morning. The Democrats are using tactics they learned from California to ensure that they continue their rule. Yes, there's definitely some red flags, something smelling a little fishy with that decision yesterday. Okay, today begins the challenge, the bell ringing challenge here in Corning. I look forward to this every year, and I was shocked when I was talking to the Assemblyman that it's been 15 years. This is the 15th annual Salvation Army Bell Ringing Challenge. This takes place where the Corning City Republicans and the Corning City Democrats face each other. One gets one day, one gets the other, and of course it's all in fun. It's all in a show of unity, really. And that's why I think it's so unique, and I really look forward to it every year. So it begins today. I'll get into the details in just a moment. Each committee will have members at Corning's Centerway Square to ring the bell from 10 a.m. till 5 p.m. So you have all day today and tomorrow. It's a friendly competition to help raise funds for the Corning Salvation Army's Red Kettle Drive. The Salvation Army uses these funds to help individuals and families in the Corning area. Of course, they're amazing, and you're going to find out a lot about them on Friday's broadcast, as we have a special 2-hour broadcast here of Frankly Speaking. It's a holiday special. We've got a lot of great music, a lot of great guests, and it all goes to benefit the Salvation Army. So if you can't make it to the challenge today or tomorrow, or just in general, stop by. We're going to have a kettle out front. You can wave. We'll hopefully get you on camera. And we'll also have opportunities throughout the morning where you can text your donations. But I'll continue. The two committees are asking the public to come out and show their support by contributing on either Wednesday or Thursday or even both days if you want to show unity. The Democrats will be ringing today. So Democrats are today, and the Republicans will be there tomorrow. While this year's elections have passed, the Corning Republican and Democrat committees want to unite for this important work to support the Corning Salvation Army for the 15th consecutive year. So, again, you'll find out more, and we're going to have two representatives, one from the Democrat side, one from the Republican side, on Friday's broadcast, which I'm really looking for that. I'm really proud. But again, today, Democrats, tomorrow, Republicans, and they'll be in Centerway right here on Market Street. I see the sheriff coming up, so this is a perfect time for me to take a break. We will be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio, and joining me in the studio this morning, it's been too long, Sheriff Jim Allard. Thanks so much for being on the program.
It's my pleasure, Frank. It's a beautiful day in Steuben County. Thanks for having me.
Well, and I should preface it by saying it's been too long because of me. We finally got everything figured out. Technical stuff is not my forte.
I like your decoration.
I was going to ask the Winter Wonderland.
Looking very Christmassy.
Did you see
here.
that?
Yeah.
The Christmas tree from Armed Women of America.
Yes, we have one in our office too.
I thought they said they dropped one off. Isn't that nice?
Did. It was very nice of of them. Yes.
I'm gonna
Yep.
show more of that when we have some representatives on next week. So I think it goes without saying. Let's start right off the jump here. Steuben County Legislature update. I mean,
Yeah.
for the layman out there, what in the world is going on?
Well, as you probably saw, the two resolutions they passed, they repealed one. That was the one to try and cause me to get my own liability insurance. I think they finally realized that the county already provided me with liability insurance under the blanket policy.
Right.
And I think there's been some confusion by some of the folks that are giving information to the legislature, the difference between insurance and indemnification, and
Right.
and I, judging by some of the statements, the public statements that were made,
Yeah.
they've interchanged the two. So I think they finally figured that one out and repealed that, which was a good first step, and I applaud them for that. The other one is going to go to court. Currently, it's scheduled for December 21st. And again, we're not
Merry
challenging.
Christmas.
Yeah, we're not challenging the fact that they can pass whatever legislation they want
Sure.
to. It just it can't be done in bad faith.
Right.
And that's entirely what our challenge is. And I feel very confident that we've made that case in our submissions, and we'll see what the judge thinks. I found out yesterday that it might get pushed back a little bit because we asked for some additional information
Okay.
from members of the legislature. So we'll find out if the judge grants that, and if so, that may push it out a little bit more, but
Okay.
it may be into next year. We'll see.
Well, I guess I'm confused because it seems like once they rescinded the one, I think many of us, and I received a lot of comments from people because I read the statement on the air. It seemed like that was almost, and I'm you can't speak for the legislature. I am, but I'm not. Well, I'm not either. But I'm saying that what people saw this as, they kind of got the cart before the horse.
Yes.
And then so they at least said almost like a concession. We'll say we were maybe wrong on this one, but why not just rescind both? Why, I wonder.
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
And that would make the most sense.
Yes. Instead of dragging this out and putting this through the courts and
Well, and costing the Steuben County
Yeah.
taxpayer tens of thousands of dollars to pursue this. It was funny because, excuse me, I was going back through the things that we've accomplished in the last 10 years
Right.
at the sheriff's office.
Yeah.
And I realized that of the last 5 sheriffs before me, they were all successfully sued, and the county had to pay out good chunks of money
Yeah.
for sexual harassment. I'm the only one that hasn't been.
yeah.
And I'm the one whose indemnification we want to take
This
away.
is so-
So
Well,
it's just very interesting and puzzling to
Well,
watch.
there was probably two major issues on this. First, how it was kept from the public,
Yes.
which that was, even people that I would say aren't from Steuben County even were saying that's wrong.
Yes.
Obviously, you are elected.
Yes.
So that was probably the biggest frustration. But also the time when in New York State people are leaving in droves, the cost of everything, taxes, to see taxpayer
seen-
money spent on
We've
this.
seen a 10% reduction
Yeah.
between the last 2 census
Yeah.
in Steuben County.
Yeah.
And this is what we're spending our time on and spending our taxpayer money on. It baffles me. The Sheriff's Association filed their friend of the court brief on Monday.
Okay.
And in that, they pointed out several legal issues with the way it was done for the judge to consider, the not least of which is one of the points that they made was that when you enact the home rule law to do something, that bylaw should go to a public referendum.
Right. Again, leaving the
Yeah.
public out. I mean, that, again, everybody that has emailed, even if they're not, because it gets a little wonky. Let's
Yes,
face it.
It is.
For
It's,
someone,
it's very convoluted.
Yes.
Yes.
So I know that was what most people were outraged at, because at least let us know, keep us updated.
Yeah.
And why? And I know some of the things, hands are tied when you can speak, when you can't speak, but that's not really necessarily our fault in the public. We have
Right.
a right to know.
Absolutely. And that's my position too, is, over the last several years, law enforcement has become completely transparent.
Yes.
How about county government be as transparent as we are? And again, first it was we were forced to be. Now I enjoy it. I
Right.
enjoy being transparent.
Yeah.
There's nothing to hide.
No.
And anyone that says you're hiding something, we can say, here's the body cam, here's the car
Here's
cam.
everything.
Right.
People don't like behind closed doors.
No, it just reeks of bad action.
It really does. And I think it's just, to me, it seems like there may be some buyer's remorse, so to speak, in this.
I think so.
Yeah, and I don't know. I haven't spoke to anybody. I'm not going to say that, but I can't imagine if they've already admitted basically one mistake. I just don't understand why there was a rush to this.
Well, I think timing is everything. Certain members were leaving
Okay,
the legislature.
that makes sense. Yeah, that's a good
I
point.
think that the time was, if they were going to try and cause this to happen, there was a time limit to it.
Right.
But again, I still maintain that the majority of the legislators care deeply about
I do too.
Steuben County. And unfortunately, when they're given bad information, that leads to bad votes and bad actions. And I think that the majority of your legislators are starting to see that.
And I would encourage anybody that voted for this on the legislature, and we've had people on the program before, especially in the radio days, if they could just answer why. And this isn't, and that's not even a loaded question. There's probably a reason why you voted for it. Please come on the air at any time, write me a statement, because I have not heard anything that's at least kind of relax my mind on this.
Right.
Because you would like to say, well, this person maybe got wrong information, or they said, no, I think this was the right. That's fine. If you think it was the right move, just tell us why.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I bet you this has been kind of humbling, is what they always say in politics, but the community reaction.
So the community reaction on my end has been
That's what I mean.
phenomenal.
Yeah, yeah.
It really, I've had, and actually I ran into your mom doing
Oh,
Toys for
yeah, I
Tots
heard,
a week or
heard,
so.
yeah.
2 weeks ago, but I also ran into a young man that I used to work with at Corning PD that I haven't seen in 15 years.
Sure.
And he made a point of coming up to me, and he said, when I first heard this, I knew it was nonsense.
Right.
He says, you were always the guy that said, let's do it best practice, let's do it right the first time.
Right.
And you were always the one that knew what was right.
Right.
He goes, so when I heard this, I thought, nah, those guys are barking up the wrong tree.
I know.
And I've heard that so consistently from so many people. I mean, people I haven't talked to in years
Right.
have come up and voiced their support. And I couldn't be more grateful. And again, as much as I dislike the lack of respect and lack of appreciation from the legislature, I got to tell you that I'm blown away by the public support that we've had during this, and the public appreciation of what we're doing.
Well, it must have been overwhelming for you, because I can't believe how many people came up to me after talking about it. They want to talk to me. I'm not the expert, but just saying how much they supported you and supported, your fight in all of this. And I thought, man, you must be getting calls and texts and stopped on the street. Yeah, but that's good.
I
though.
did. It's very good, and again, it just, when you get that validation, because we've worked really hard over the last 10 years to try to bring the sheriff's office into the digital age and try to take it from analog to digital. And,
Right.
and I started writing down all the programs that we began since I've been sheriff, and I'm up over 30
Wow.
right now. And these are all things that don't benefit me as a person. They benefit public safety in
Right.
Steuben County. And that's been since I became sheriff. I did my career with Corning PD.
All right.
This is because I think I have something to offer, and I think it's the right thing to do. So to get that validation back from the public is just, it's incredibly humbling, and just makes you feel warm all over.
I'm
really
sure it does. And you mentioned that you used the word earlier, timing, on all of this. I think the timing of this on the other side of that coin is at a time when we see police being attacked in the media. We see horrible things like the defund the police movement that was a while back. This, whether or not they're related in public perception, which is obviously one of the biggest things that especially a legislature or any elected body has to deal with, it was a very bad public relations campaign, to put it politely.
Well, it goes against what most Steuben County people stand for.
Yeah.
It goes against the belief system of most folks in Steuben County. Most folks in Steuben County support law enforcement, want law enforcement to be supported, and they want to see their law enforcement invested in. Because, again, and you know what it's like, if you're on the other end of a 30-minute wait for the police to come when someone's trying to break into your house, that's not a good place to be.
No.
And unfortunately, this county's 1,400 square. Fortunately or unfortunately, it's 1,400 square miles. And after dark, our people are just running along with the state police from call to call to call. Sometimes you're waiting 20 minutes on an emergency call. I think citizens expect better than that. And the only way we get better than that is by putting on additional folks to respond
Mm-hmm.
and make sure that we keep that staffing level current, and that costs money.
Yeah.
And there's folks in the legislature that their bottom line is what's the taxes,
Right.
and
Right.
that's all they care about.
Right.
So what we do is in conflict with that.
Right. And I would say taxes, a lot of people are concerned about taxes, but that 20-minute wait is a lifetime. You're not thinking
Well, it's
about
the
taxes
difference
at the
between life and death,
Exactly.
especially on an EMS call.
And you're not thinking about your taxes at that point.
No.
And this is coming from someone that wants lower taxes, so I'm just saying,
Well, there's some misnomers with that too. I know that there was some statements made about me doubling the budget or whatever. What those statements don't show is how much we've saved the county that aren't in there. And we went from 6 school resource officers to 21. Well, that's a drastic increase in budget.
Yeah.
However, it's all reimbursed by the schools.
Sure.
So the budget goes up, but so's the revenue side.
Sure.
And, the same thing with, we added 5 deputies for centralized arraignment. The county was going to be faced with doing 3 courts and having to staff that with attorneys
Okay.
twice a day, 365 days a year, to the tune of about $1 million a year.
Wow.
We came in as a solution and said, well, if you put on 5 deputies, we'll bring everybody from those 2 courts to Bath.
Oh, okay.
And in the meantime,
Yeah.
when they're not doing transports, they'll be out doing public safety, meeting the public safety needs of the citizens.
Yeah.
And it's going to save you $500,000 a year. Basically, it's a wash. Those guys are paid for by the savings they're realizing and not having to hire attorneys they can't find.
Yeah.
That's not in there.
No, that's the problem with numbers.
Right. Yeah. What is it? Liars figure and figures lie?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, I'm going to take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Beautiful view of Marcus Street here in Corning, broadcasting live from the Hasselson studio. Our guest this morning, Sheriff Allard. We got a lot more questions. Hey, by the way, I heard that there was a big success for Toys for Tot.
So we've been really fortunate. Steuben County folks they never cease to amaze me with their
That's true.
generosity. We collected, in 2-hour span, we collected 506 toys.
Wow.
For Toys for Tots between the 2 Walmarts, and thanks you to both Irwin and Hornell Walmart for letting us set up and do that every year. They're phenomenal partners. But yeah, and then last weekend we did Shop with a Cop.
Oh, yeah. How'd that go?
So between Irwin, Walmart, and Hornell Walmart in Bath, we did over 110 kids.
Wow.
With every agency in the county.
That's
So
great.
it wasn't just us. It was
Yeah.
every agency, the state police, and some from Allegheny County joined in. But I think the final total tally was 110 kids whose families now have Christmas.
Now have a Christmas.
because of
Yeah.
Shop with a Cop. It's just, I
How
was
long
at the Irwin one. It was so much fun.
How long have you been doing that?
We started that 9 or 10 years ago.
gonna say.
The first year we had like a dozen kids.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And then it just continues to spread, and in Hornell, it's even the group that we do it with in Hornell is even bigger.
Oh, okay.
And it's just amazing. But every agency in Steuben County participates
Yeah.
now.
Well, so you have Toys for Tots fill the patrol car. You
Yep.
got coats for kids. Can
Yep.
people still give?
Yes.
Okay.
Especially with the coats for kids.
Yeah.
Because those will go out to the school districts in January.
Okay.
So yeah, we can use. We're at like 50 coats right now.
So you could probably
So
use
we could
more.
use a lot more.
Where do people go to donate?
They can donate right at the public safety building,
Okay.
or if they've got something and we've got a bag full of coats for you, call us up. We'll come get them.
Oh, that's great. Well, I think I like seeing the pictures because you sent out the press release. Also, I know I mention this every time, but the newsletter is such a good idea.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, because it fills you in. It's actually kind of overwhelming how busy you guys
I know.
are at the sheriff's
I
office.
know.
What do you have to do? Like keep taking notes throughout the whole month so you don't forget anything?
So luckily we have a pretty decent records management system where
Yeah.
I can search all cases for under a specified date range.
Yeah.
And then I tally it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's very impressive,
Mm-hmm.
and so I've got to ask, and I don't. We'll get into some more positive things. I have to do a negative here every once in a while, but have you,
don't
found?
have to.
I know. Christmas season. I guess you're right. But have you found? Because it seems like this month I haven't received as many press releases about crimes. Has anything changed? How are we doing on? Because I've heard troubling news on overdose deaths.
Yeah, there's more going on. This time of year, I tend to scale back a little bit on those.
Okay.
It's just, I don't know. It gets depressing sometimes.
Yeah.
We just had.
I'm glad I brought it up.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas. It's always good when your interviewer says, "Well, it's kind of depressing," but
Yeah. Well, and then the one we just had, I sent out yesterday from a couple days ago, a young man that allegedly was involved in an armed robbery in Rochester, steals a car,
that.
drives it down here, dumps it, steals another car, and we're seeing so much more of that. We had a case, I think it was last summer, where a person was stealing all the way down from Rochester, went to Elmira, stole a U-Haul and some motorcycles, dumped it in Savona, and rode off on
like a video game.
It's what it feels like, yeah. And we're seeing so much more of that now, and it's very, very disturbing. The amount that we're getting from other places that end up here, because we've got two interstates that come right through the middle of our county. And I had a long talk with the Monroe Crime Analysis Center, the guy that's in charge of that. His name's Dave Phelps. And, he wants to get license plate readers up on 86 and 99 here in Steuben. And we're trying to get a grant to do that. But he says, you have no idea the amount of trafficking
I'm sure.
that's coming through this county on a daily basis. And I said, I'm sure we don't.
So disturbing. How much of the blame for this is on the bail reform and the decisions coming from Albany?
Well, a lot. I mean, you look at folks that would have been on bail that are not, that are arraigned and released. We have narcotics cases where we're buying ounces of methamphetamine, and we know that they're going to be released as soon as because that's in the law.
Yeah.
And, they're mixing stuff, and that's where a lot of the overdoses come from, folks that are mixing things with other things and then selling it as something else, and then people overdose because of it, because it's not what they thought they were buying, even though it's illegal. And, the accountability for that it's so difficult for anyone to assume the responsibility of their bad action, because they're going to get arraigned and released.
And I know we talked about it last time, and I talk about it on the show a lot, but what disturbs me is when young people are getting involved because they know there's no repercussion. So when you have, and I brought this story up a lot, but in the city where it's almost like something out of Charles Dickens, where they're pickpocketing and stealing from bars, and when they get called on it, they go, yeah, call the cops. We're fine.
Yeah, I'll be out tomorrow.
Yeah. And so then, of course, you're going to have gangs recruit these young people, and it's so disturbing. I think a lot of times we read it in the New York Post, and we think, well, it's not going to happen here. It is happening here.
Oh, yeah, it's here.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, people, well, I don't want to get into the whole, this is what you get when you vote for certain, whatever. But it is.
Well, what's disturbing for me is you recall, leading up to bail reform, we met with the DAs, we met with the sheriffs, we did multiple press releases and said, this is what will happen if you pass this legislation. I hate being right.
I know.
I hate being right.
You and so many others, Assemblyman Palmisano, everybody talking about this so far in advance. But I think we can all say, how could you not see this coming? That's what was so frustrating when Albany supported it. You said, what about this? Is it just the virtue signaling? What is it that makes it so?
Well, and it was all about, it all spiraled from a case in Rikers Island.
Yeah.
And, we're going to shut down Rikers Island. Rikers Island is still open.
Yeah.
And it's still operating in the same way it was.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the rest of the state has to pay for the headlines of a few.
Exactly. Can you stay with us?
Sure.
All right. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Hakem. You're watching Frankly Speaking. We're broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Joining me in that studio, Sheriff Jim Allard. So quite a few things to get to. Yesterday, I saw the press release. I wasn't able to make it, but tell us about the Rural Community Equity.
So that was a group.
Or county.
County Equity. It was Senator O'Mara and I believe 5 assembly persons. Margie Burns was there, and Phil
Yeah.
Palmisano was there, and 3 from outside our area. There were folks from the energy sector, from the broadband sector, school district superintendents.
Oh, wow.
The GST BOCES superintendent was there, and industrial development agencies were there. I was there, and it was a discussion of the inequity of legislation and support between downstate and upstate, basically, and all of the things that are coming. Especially, there was a lot of talk about the electric buses for schools and
It's
what
impossible.
a disaster
It's
that's going to be. And there was also a lot of talk too about the grid. The electric grid up here right now
No.
isn't able to sustain it. There were several folks there from the Farm Bureau that are talking about different equipment that they need that they can't get enough electric for
Yeah.
as it is now. And then if you throw these charging stations for all of these huge buses,
Yeah.
we don't have the grid to sustain it.
Well, and also, and I know this isn't something I want to necessarily get on a tangent about, but with the school buses, electric buses, I mean, it's got to be the end of sports, travel sports, because talking to people that are in the know on this, like Phil and others, the charge isn't that long. You can't make it.
Right.
So how do you even go, out of town to any
Well,
away
for
game?
example, you've got kids that go from Canisteo
Yeah.
to Bush campus and Elmira and back
Yeah.
every day.
Yeah.
It's not gonna. They're gonna have to charge when they get there in order to come back, and who's gonna pay for that?
Mm-hmm.
If are all the charging systems gonna be universal? They say they are, but
Yeah.
who knows? And the weight of these buses
Mm-hmm.
are so much heavier than our current buses too. In this county, we have a lot of dirt roads.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's going to happen in the springtime
Yeah.
to those roads? And the towns are going to have to pick up the bill on that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just so many unanswered questions that go along with this. And, I saw on 60 Minutes, I don't know if you watched it last week,
Mm-hmm.
Wyoming is looking at ways to capture the carbon from emissions
Oh,
at
interesting.
natural gas plants.
Yeah.
Still zero carbon emissions. There's so many ways out there to do what we want to do, but do it in a smart way that works.
Right. Isn't this, to tie the two together is kind of odd, but like with bail reform,
Mm-hmm.
it seems like we do things to get attention,
To be the first.
to be the first. We want to be California. California wants to beat us. It's
Yeah.
always,
Yeah.
hey, they have a failed policy. Let us, emulate it, make it a
we
little
can
bit.
do.
Yeah.
We can double down on
Yeah,
that.
we want to make it worse, but I don't think people realize how much it is going to cost us with the EV buses.
Well, just the buses are 3 times the cost of a normal bus.
And you've got to have the same amount of buses, if not more. But I'm glad that you had that event, because I think it does sometimes feel like we're preaching to the choir, though, because I think all of us in rural areas know
Right.
that we're, that's how many times I've had people call about splitting the state,
Yeah.
and there's a reason why I've heard that for the last 20 years. But
Yeah, that was the whole impetus of that group was let's make it equal.
yeah,
Let's get some equity upstate, and let's recognize the uniqueness of what we have. We have a diminishing population and diminishing tax base.
sure. Yeah, I know.
Who's going to pay? And then all of these costs are going to be shoved down to the local taxpayer.
Well, that's it. And people don't realize, well, people do. I think it's the politicians don't care that when all these people leave, they're not cutting back spending. We're the ones that have to make it up.
We'll continue it
Yeah.
and increase. Yeah.
and increase, unfortunately. We got
Yeah.
to take another short break. We go through quick breaks here at the end. So I hope you stay with us. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox being joined by Sheriff Allard. So I saw yesterday a press release, and I know we've talked about it a lot when we talk about recruitment and retention, but you're in need, as always, of corrections officers.
We are big time right now. So our 2 previous lists from the. So let me back up. The state civil service finally listened to us and stopped doing tests. People can put in their
great.
experience, and personnel can approve them based on that.
That's a long time coming.
But it's still a list,
yeah.
which typically are expired, or as soon as we get them, they're done.
Yeah.
As soon as we get the names, we start backgrounds, and we are in dire need for correction officers, and they also cover court security.
Okay.
Most of our court security are retirees that work part time. and several of them head south for the winter.
Of course.
So we really need that, and what a great way to start your career into law enforcement. Of the folks that I've sent to an academy to be a deputy, the only ones that I've sent to an academy are ones that came from serving in the jail first.
Okay.
And then when they pass the test, we put them over onto the deputy side and send them to a police academy, pay them to go, but show us that desire before we pay you, not after.
Right.
And it's worked out very, very well. It's a good pipeline system, but we need to generate some more interest in that correction side of the house, so that we can continue to meet our needs for the county of Steuben.
And so if you're over 18 years old, have a high school diploma or GED, New York State driver's license, and are interested, contact, I'll give the phone number, 607-622-3905. It's a competitive wages.
Yes.
New York State benefits, right?
Yep.
So and retirement. So I mean, it's a great opportunity.
It's a great opportunity to get in the pension system also.
Yeah. So sign up today. We're going to take our last break, and then we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, what number is that? Give me 10 seconds. There we go. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, that's our beautiful view of Market Street, the Hesselson's studio. Our guest, Sheriff Jim Allard. So it's almost the end of the year. I'm going to ask you here in a moment what you'd like to see in the new year. But I know that you're excited for the new year because as soon as March, the time we all, next to Christmas, it's our favorite time of year.
It's
petition time. So you'll be out there already in March. Can you believe it?
Yeah. So we'll be doing our third run.
Yeah. Congratulations.
In March, and out getting our 1,000 signatures across the county so that we can be on the ballot.
Is that what it is, 1,000?
Yeah.
Wow.
For countywide. Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Well, congratulations. I knew after our last conversation when the news first broke about everything going on, I had a feeling you were going to run.
Well, 8 years ago when I first decided to run, I met with the Deputies Association, and I said basically the same thing I've said since then is, I've done my career. If you think that I'm going to be useful in this role, and you'll support me, I'll run. But if I run, I'm going to guarantee it 12 years.
Okay.
Because so often you see a 4-year term into another, people start to buy into that culture, and then it changes. And they start to buy, and then it changes.
Yep.
So in order for this, I knew then, as I know now, in order for the sheriff's office to progress, there had to be some stability in the leadership. And luckily, the undersheriff has said that as long as I'm there, he'll be there.
Oh, good.
And our secretary, Terry Moore, you met.
Of course.
She said as long as we're there, she'll be there. So we hope to be there at least another 4 years to continue in the trajectory that we've established.
That's great. Well, just before we go, what would you like to see in the new year for the sheriff's office?
Again, I would like to see the county act as a partner. I think it will. I think we'll see some changes there. And I would like to see a realization of the need to invest in public safety, and not just the sheriff's office, but they've started the EMS program at the county level. We need to get moving on that. No one is safer because we named a person to be in charge of it. The county needs to invest in that and expand that so that it can make a real impact on the citizenry and on their safety. For the last 3 years, the only countywide EMS has been us.
Yeah, wow.
With our EMT program.
Overwhelming.
So we really need to amp that up and get that so that it's actually serving citizens and making an impact in EMS.
Well, we are out of time, so let me say this because I don't think we'll talk before. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you.
Thanks for being on the show, and we'll have you on
Always a
again
pleasure.
in the new year if
Thank you.
if you'd be kind enough.
I would absolutely.
All right. Well, join us tomorrow morning starting at 7 a.m. for Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox.